Good evening. The June 27th, 2024 meeting is now called to order. First agenda item will be the Pledge of Allegiance. Would you lead us, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The next item is agenda changes. Does the board have any recommended changes to tonight's agenda?
I do, since the awards came in for our artists, we need to update, I moved to update the agenda to include the Festival of the Arts recognition.
Okay. Does the majority of board agree to add the Festival of the Arts recognition, which will then become item number 4, so we'll place it before school connections? Okay, so here majority agrees, so we will move on to that as the next agenda.
We are excited that we have some of our student artists here today to join us. It was, I think, I don't know how many board members went. I think we had a lot of board, our board was there. Many staff went to the Festival of Arts this year, and it was just an amazing, amazing show. And I had the honor of being able to choose many different pieces for the Superintendent's Award. And so many of those pieces are on display out here in the halls and up front in our display cases. And so I just wanted to take the time tonight to recognize not just the artists that are here, but our artists that couldn't be able to join us tonight. And I know some of them have practiced, so I wanted to get to that. Multiple have practiced, so I want to go ahead and recognize those that are here. Yes, please. All right. Elsie, sorry, let me get this right. There you go. Elsie Peterson, come on up. And Chance LaRipa. Everybody stop so your parents can get pictures. Yeah. Aubrey Moon. So Emma can get pictures. Carly Worth. And Nathan Munoz. All right. So thank you to those of you that came. Did I forget anybody? I think those are the only students that I saw come in tonight. We have 5 other awards for students that weren't able to make it tonight. So thank you for your contribution. It is beautiful. I was honored to be able to choose you to be here and be a part of our central office. So thank you. Now would be a great time to leave if you have so. Yes. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that great recognition. The next agenda item is school connections. The school connections on the strategic plan, district improvement plan, and school improvement plans will be turned over to interim superintendent Rachel Davenport and staff to present to the board.
I'm excited to have our team here with live microphones so that I could hear some of the scratching going on. So I'm super excited to offer them the opportunity to use our new microphone system. So thanks for being here. They put together a really good presentation.
Good evening, I'm Gwen. We brought the teaching and learning team to meet with you tonight. We went ahead and included a presentation that we're going to share with you this evening, and it really contains excerpts from the district improvement plan as well as this information from the school improvement plans. You'll notice, as we go through this presentation, everything is from a district perspective, but I'm gonna call out in a few places, even though this is what we see as a district, we see some wide variation with some of our schools, and so I encourage you also, don't just look at the presentation, look at the school improvement plans as well. So I'm gonna turn this over to Carrie Brumley, who is our Director of Elementary Schools, and she's gonna share a portion of the presentation around Goal 1. I love it.
Go down. Hey, you know, we just don't wanna get it wrong, cause that's embarrassing.
Switch it up.
Always come here.
Your team always has a backup plan.
Plan.
So check this out.
I can just say click.
Yeah. There we go.
No offense. Okay, thank you. Yes, as Gwen mentioned, I'm Carrie Brumley, and I'm here proud to represent our elementary education along with the rest of the team. So here we go. Click, so goal 1, which will come up first here. In just a second. There we go. So I know, and we so appreciate the fact that you read all of this information carefully, so we will not spend a lot of time on some of these things, but this first portion is going to be out of goal 1, and our outcomes, our strategic plan outcomes are there. Okay, click. Go ahead. The first piece of data we're going to look at here is our kindergarten readiness data. This is a state requirement for all schools in our state. And you can see over time, there's been some changes in this. What's really important about this data is it does give our primary teachers an opportunity to kind of anticipate the readiness level of our students as they arrive at school. You'll see that in some cases, it's across some of the domains listed, we did see a dip this year in how kids came to school ready. So that's important, especially as we take a look at the data and how this group of kindergartners did, even though they came in just a little bit behind their peers from previous year. Okay, click. We're going to take a look now at the DIBELS 8, which is our key ELA assessment, our systemic assessment, and our iReady.
And that's English language arts.
Yes.
So we're gonna throw
English
some acronyms around.
Yeah,
you know,
we love our
we live in acronyms, they're fun. Okay, so I know you reviewed this, but let's just take a look at what we saw between our beginning of the year data and our end of the year data. As a reminder, this was the first year that our teachers across the system implemented CKLA curriculum with Amplify. CKLA brings with it a tremendous amount of rigor, so much so that one of the things we heard from our teachers pretty consistently was some concerns as to whether or not students would be able to access it given the elevated rigor. As you can see, from the beginning of the year to the end of the year, we saw fairly dramatic changes, especially with our kindergarten group, which is significant given that they came in a little less ready this year. So that is what you hope to see, and that's how you know you're on track with an excellent curriculum, in addition to excellent practice. You can see first grade and second grade also made really nice gains. What's most interesting to point out here is the level of number of students, percentage of students who began the year well below benchmark, which is what the red line represents. So growth in all of our early learning grades across the system. Okay. This graph here now shifts us over to where we are in our mathematics for K2. This gives us a little different view. What we have on this slide is a year-over-year gain. So you'll see for the first column, the 22-23 spring versus the second column, 23-24, this is measuring different groups of students. And it's also kind of telling us, are we on track keeping either the same gains or even elevating those gains with our instruction with different groups of kids. So this is one that really helps us focus on how our curriculum and instruction is functioning, regardless of who walks into our classroom. You can see that kindergarten, first grade, and second grade over the course of the year made nice gains in moving from to that on standard or above standard position. You see high numbers of students who are mid or above grade level at the end of the year, which we also like to see. What's very significant for us on this slide is the huge decrease in our students that we have in K2 in those who need below standard or accelerated instruction because they're below standard. You want to see those low numbers there. We can handle that. We can move forward on that, especially when we have numbers that are low, like we see. So those kids will come in, we'll assess them again in the fall, and we'll take action and get going. All right, moving forward. Now this is a very interesting slide that's new to us. Highlighter, the little red dot. Or that one. Yeah, laser, thank you, Jeremy. Laser. Okay, so this, I'm gonna take a few seconds here because this chart is different than one we've seen in the past. This is a chart that shows us how children moved over the course of time. So when you take a look at this and you see this, and you see you have the first chart, the top where it says kindergarten, and I have an arrow there for you. When you see 150 students with that little red person, that means that at the start of the school year, we had 150 kindergarten students system-wide who were well below benchmark. Now again, these are the students that the iReady or the WalkKids data showed us were coming in with a little more difficulty or needed a little more support. And so what this chart shows us is that of those 150, am I good now? Oh, there it is, yay, okay. Of the 150 students, this second bar shows what happened with those students over the course of the year. So just this 150, you can see that 23, I think that says 27%, 13%, and so on. That's how they finished the year. This is significant because of that 150 students, most of those students shifted to either just below standard or approaching below benchmark, we call that, on standard or above. In fact, 64% of the students that started the year well below moved into a different level of performance, and that's really outstanding. So you can then see those numbers as well as you move down, 115 of our first graders, 119 second graders, and you can see how those students moved. By the same token, if you look across the chart, you're gonna see that at the start of the year, these students here who were on standard when they got here, you can see what happened to them over the course of the year. And that is really great movement that we like to see. The big question we need to ask ourselves now is how do we accomplish that so we can replicate it going forward, which is what the schools talk about through their weekly PLCs and discussions of practice. Okay. Oh, hey, that's my animation. There it is. That's what I just said. Okay, great. Okay, so I will not read this slide to you. I know you have reviewed it. What I want to call out here for this is even though we had a significant number of students come in kindergarten slow to learn or needing some support, as at least if we rely on that WalkKids data, even though 75% of those students finished on year or above, which means they're on track to read by third grade, which we know and have known now for years that is a critical and important thing, that we send children to third grade reading. Click. And then what I'd like to call out on this slide, so what do we do about this? Our job now through the summer is we do our own brainstorming as a team. We talk about what we believe needs to happen, and then we get together with building leaders when they return in August after a well-deserved rest, and we begin to collaborate about what it is we're going to do going forward to impact some of the numbers and build from the strengths that we see. What I will call out on this is that at the elementary level, we are going to shift our focus but to include deep cognitive engagement practices for students. We have an excellent curriculum. I think our data shows us that. What now we need to do is ensure that we are bringing our teachers enough training and support so that they have those engagement strategies that really keep students focused, interested, motivated. That's the other piece of this puzzle that we need to continue to move things forward. So our focus will be that going forward, in addition to those other practices that you see and what the buildings will be doing individually in their own sites as well. I'm now going to pass it off to Dr. Jeremy Sullivan, who will take it from here.
Hi, thanks Carrie. Yeah, so goal 2 really focuses on how we're meeting the needs of the whole child. And so the data we're gonna look at here comes from our climate and culture data from families, staff, and students, student well-being data from students and from staff, and then also we'll look at our attendance data. Click. And you know our strategic plan outcomes that are tied to goal 2, creating a whole child that is embraced, empowered, resilient, and critical thinkers. Okay, go ahead. So the first slide, this is our 3rd through 5th grade students, and you'll notice it says Panorama Social Emotional Learning, Student Competency and Wellbeing Measures. Whenever you see that title, that's gonna be kids reflecting on themselves. So this is self-reported data from our students. I would call this a plateau for the year. You can see little shifts of 1 and 2 percentage points going down and going up. We didn't see really any shifts. We do with this metric, because we don't change the questions, we get that national norming there in the center. The positive feeling one, obviously being something that we're gonna be drilling down into ourselves, but also at the building level. And that's one thing to surface. This is one of those moments where the data here is gonna capture that high level district, but really the actionable data that's going to produce outcomes for kids lives in that building specific data within their SIPs and their connections. But we wanted to do the high level so you can see. The next slide is same survey, just from our 6 through 12 kids, so secondary. This one, while we do see the drops within the student well-being from the fall to the spring, one of the celebrations here is that we actually saw overall year to year a higher favorability rating coming from our 6 through 12 students when compared nationally from where we were in the past few years. And so year to year trend, positive, school year trend, plateau and drop, and we'll address why some of the beliefs within the drops that you'll see. The next one, I believe, is the, yep.
Really quick.
Yeah.
Can you remind me, so self-efficacy, not for like word for word, but how we define it within the Panorama
Yeah, so
survey?
self-efficacy is gonna be centered around the belief that I can accomplish this, or I can achieve this task, I can reach my goal. And we see that both in the student data within their SEL data, and we also see that in our teacher data within the teaching efficacy category as well. So it's just the belief that I can accomplish the work, accomplish the task.
Are the questions, especially at the high school level, pretty much left to the kids to read and figure out what it is they're asking me?
Yeah, teachers are equipped to be able to answer the questions. Like all of the questions are available to everybody, so the teachers know sort of what to anticipate if the kids ask. But yeah, we definitely see the more guided survey taking at the elementary level, and then the secondary, they take it within their advisory courses, and it's just, we provide the space and the time. The other thing to point out is it's not required. Students and families can opt out of the Panorama survey, and the way they opt out of that is by just not engaging in taking the survey.
Oh.
So we make sure that that's available. There's no forcing of that. And so that
So even with the kids, they can opt in.
they can, yeah, absolutely.
Question.
Yeah.
Does this program collect any self-reported demographic information?
We don't need to collect the self-reported demographic, luckily, and you're actually gonna see some disaggregated data here in a few slides, because since it's all integrated with our student information system and tied to our student accounts, we get all of that demographic data that we can use to disaggregate it. So this is our teacher perception of students. So this is the SEL measure that we're actually able to use for K-12, because the student reported ones start at 3rd grade. And so you can see here the 10 categories that our teachers reported. Again, a little bit of a plateau. We did see some minor shifts towards the positive, with the largest shift being there down at the bottom of the social perspective taking. The interesting thing, when you look at numbers only tell one aspect of the story. And so one aspect that we're looking forward to diving into here is our students reported very small drops within their SEL skills and abilities, whereas the teachers reported a small increase. And so there's a story within there that we'll dive into, and again, that's a story that will become illuminated as we drill down deeper into building specific and where do things exist there. But it's really important for us to get the both perspectives so that way we can figure out how to move forward with the entire system on board. Click. So now we're gonna shift, that was SEL, now we're gonna shift into climate and culture. Climate and culture data is also collected through Panorama, through our surveys, and then that information feeds into our student success data dashboard. So you'll hear Panorama mentioned, but this is a different way we use Panorama with our climate and culture. So the first is everyone gets surveyed, all stakeholders, being staff, students, and families, get surveyed on our school climate survey. And so climate topic, I should say. So what you'll see here listed at the top, you have certificated staff, so those are gonna be our teachers. And then beneath that, you have our building level staff that are gonna be in the support roles, such as paraprofessionals, office managers, secretaries, interacting with students in some capacity. They have a shortened version. And then we have our family member survey that goes out to all of our families' email addresses. And then we have our students 3 through 5 and our students 6 through 12. What you're gonna see in this slide and the moving forward one is that we have work to do. You're gonna see there are drops across the system within our culture, not major ones, but if I see a 4-point drop, it's gonna catch my eye. And we definitely see that, and I think we have to acknowledge what our system has gone through over the past several months and the impact that has had throughout the system. The point is, the numbers are what they are. I don't ever believe in discounting numbers. You face them head on, you develop plans, and you find where your inroads can be. And with all of this data, climate data, I can tell you that our team is taking it very seriously, and we're gonna be enacting some pretty big positive initiatives and things to rally the community and the kids and the staff and all of us back together. So I wanted to preface that as we go through here. I'll just go through the slides, and if there's specifics you wanna know, then we can go there. Yeah.
Was this taken in June or May? Or?
This is taken in April.
Oh, April.
Yeah, so our 2 collection periods.
April.
Yeah, so.
We didn't
Yeah.
have anything going on.
Just a few things on the plate at that point in time. But again, these are the people within our system that are taking the time to share with us their hearts. And so we have to take it seriously, and we have to,
Oh, yeah.
there's some work to do, but it's positive work and good work.
You were saying the window of collections is fall, right?
Oh, yes. So fall collection happens at the end of October. We have a 2-week window. And then spring collection happened the last week of April into the first week of May. And so that's also good context to have. We go to the next slide. So these are the other topics that we survey. So we have school belonging, that's a student-only topic. We have school teacher and student relationships, again, it's a student-only topic. And then our families are asked their questions in regards to school fit. As you can see here, drops across the board. One of the drops that I found most surprising when I'm living in our numbers is that 3 through 5 student population. And so it's gonna be interesting looking on that as we go through the years, just because our elementaries have really been diving into their MTSS blueprint work and implementing those blueprints now, and that also covers social emotional learning and developing that school community. And so I'm wondering if that drop also couldn't be tied to kids gaining more of an understanding of what it means to belong. And so that's one that we're obviously really focused on because we have a very specific strategic plan metric for it. The only other thing on here was just the school fit for the family. Again, saw a little bit of a drop within that, large variance when we disaggregate that information by building. And so again, something that our buildings will be living in a little bit more to see what steps maybe their family's asking them to take. Next slide. So this is something new that we added last year, and it was assessing perception in regards to how is the district living up to our stated core values, and then how do our families and everyone feel that we're doing just within the strategic plan and things tied to that. So you can see here, again, we had no change there within the teachers and staff. That number did take a very dramatic hit at the end of last year. Last year's when we saw that 19% drop within that number that was like, whoa, there's something going on there. This year we pretty much held steady, but again, I don't think anyone would say 34% is where we want to be.
Are we at the point where we cleaned up that staff data?
Yeah.
So, okay.
Yeah, where it's all pretty solid now, especially in now we're still, I will point out, we don't get 100% staff participation. And so we do get a much higher percentage, varying by building, generally within about the 70 to 90% range. But
Just for clarification, because that sounds a little weird, basically we had staff that had already departed, they were still in the system, so they would kind of count towards the numbers and skew in the data.
yeah, mainly on our response rates data, that was the one. We had different, because it all pulls from Skyward, and it actually allowed us to really do a lot of data cleanup on the Skyward, because we would run those reports, and then the principals would say, this person doesn't work here, this person's no longer here, but this was a student teacher and they left. And this year we were able to both collections had perfectly clean rosters. Yeah.
I would expect that your data allows you to look at, not just judging the district as an entirety, but actually looking at specific areas that, our numbers are different here than they are over here, and allow you to bore down in and find out.
Yeah.
What's the issue here?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what's really great about the new dashboard that we have and the way it's set up. And now our whole system has access to it. This was the year that we were able to give access to all classroom teachers as well for their kids, is we can drill down to an individual student. So like I can access an individual student within any school, and I can see for the past year their attendance, their academics, their assessments, their behavior, what they reported for SEL, what their teacher reported for SEL, all the climate data. I can also go in and see constructed responses that they've given to surveys. And so if I'm thinking like from the perspective of a classroom teacher, once they gain access to their rosters next year, they could really have a really good handle on the kids that are coming into their system, their classroom, both from an academic standpoint and from a social emotional learning standpoint.
Will they be able to see that before school starts?
Yes, so the rollover is gonna be happening mid-August, and so we're hoping that they'll have access within at least a full week before school starts, but it may be a little bit before that too, just because we have a bunch of integration adjustments happening this summer. So this is what I was mentioning, and this kind of, Ed, to follow up about being able to drill down. These next several slides are gonna look at our climate and culture data through disaggregated populations. And so it's gonna look at broken down by race, ethnicity, LEP means limited English proficiency, by special education status, 504 status, and highly capable student status. So the first slide, what you're looking at here, so this is.
Are students that are 504, they're not also included in SPED?
No.
Okay.
No, 504 falls into the medical needs. So for 3 through 5 students, what you're seeing here is you see the disaggregated populations that I mentioned along the left, and then you have our different topics that we use for students, the different categories going across the top. The first line there for all is gonna be the aggregate score for that population of favorability. If it's a green box, then that group is higher than the aggregate. If it's a red box, that group is lower than the aggregate, and then beige means they've stayed the same. And so you can see here, at the district level, there's a variance in what our students are saying in regards to their climate and culture data. This is good for us to see. The meat of this data lives at our building level, about what are our kids saying about within that building and how we can drill down. So one thing we started last year and we're continuing this year is really purposeful getting into these numbers, facing them, and then taking action based on what we see within the numbers. And again, that we do that at the district level, but the real progress happens at the building. Go ahead. Next slide will be the same data. It's gonna be for the 3 through 5 students, or the 6 through 12 students. Again, set up the same. You'll notice that this 6 through 12 student data across the board is lower than elementary student. That is nationally normed. That's something we see across the board. But then as you look down in here, you can see that our students are reporting very different experiences depending on the category and depending on the identifying characteristic. And so for a goal of meeting the needs of the whole child for all of our kids, this data is very important to us. Especially then, you add in our family perspective. This adds another sort of layer to the conversation because sometimes our family perspectives are very different than our student perspectives. And so how do we work on helping bridge that gap? So for example, if you go back to the previous slide, Corey, you can see here, and it's in both of the first two slides, but our highly capable students report at the secondary level either at or above the aggregate in every category, and then our highly capable students at the 3-5 level actually report above the aggregate in every category. But then in our parent data, we have our highly capable parents reporting scores below the aggregate from the others. And so again, there's a disconnect there in that experience, and so we get to live in that story and try to figure out how we can bridge those gaps in perspectives. And our last thing for goal 2 is just looking at our attendance. The overarching goal is can we rebound or have we rebounded from COVID? So the next slide breaks down our attendance data. You can see that winter continues to be the lowest drop, that winter checkpoint, but then there is that rebound within the spring, and so we are still showing that within the district attendance, we are moving in the right direction or holding steady. I also know that there's additional attendance initiatives and stuff that they've been looking into, and I know Val Anderson on the teaching and learning team has been working closely with our buildings throughout the year on purposeful things to continue to trend positive for attendance.
So I think historically, pre-COVID, like 94.
Yeah.
Still a little bit lower.
Where
I think it's a shift to not just for student attendance, but a shift for staff attendance, for the health and well-being of the classrooms, the community. We are saying stay home when you're sick, where before we used to reward people for coming to school sick and coming to work sick. Now we're saying if you're sick, please stay home and get better. It's, you know, I don't know anecdotally if it helps with the spread, having a kid in elementary and a kid in middle school right now. It's they spent their fair share of time at home with colds and coughs and RSV this year too, and they were genuinely sick. And I know one of them didn't even make a 90% attendance this year because of RSV and some other illnesses, so.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
And I'll cover it in the next slide. We'll get to the end slides. Just
Could you-
pop them all up. I didn't know they
Can you go
were.
back one slide?
Yeah.
The yellow means what?
The yellow means that group reported the same total score, favorability score, as the overall population. So like if you look here, under school climate, that's 62. Oh, I forgot we got a laser.
Wow.
I don't know.
It's working. Lost the whole thing.
You might be able to
There we
take
go.
over.
We're
Okay.
good.
So you can see right here at the 62,
Yeah, what does that mean?
that matches the all. So when all of the data is taken into consideration, very sensitive now. It's even. So beige means it matches the overall total.
So that's the mean.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, so what we're looking at here is we're trying to look at what's called disproportionality within the data. So are there subgroups or different populations that are reporting a different experience than what the overall number says? If we only focus on the overall number, we're never gonna meet the needs of the whole child within the district. We have to look at the experiences that are disproportionate from the overall data, and that's really what this is looking at. Does that make sense, though?
Well, except under school fit, the white has 60,
Mm-hmm. And then,
and under,
See the all on school fit at the top at 60.
so you have school fit 60, and then the two yellows are also 60.
oh, okay, I get it.
Whereas the reds are lower, and the greens are highlighted.
Okay, I see, okay.
Gotcha. Let me see if I did, there we go. We're working. So this is kind of what we just went over about what we're noticing within the data. We did notice an increase in that at that secondary level year to year, which is positive. That did help close the gap that we saw in past years in regards to elementary versus secondary. Big takeaways from our data are listed here, and I know you've read through these. The big thing to take away from this is really that middle bullet. Purposeful work across all schools and department to rebuild trust with the community. When we say community, we mean all of us. We're all a part of that community. We know that the numbers are not where we want them to be, but we also know that we're engaged in the work that's going to move the numbers in the right direction. So that is goal 2. I will turn it back to Gwen.
Jeremy, will you speak
Yeah.
for just a moment about some of the changes that we have planned and how we're gonna gather data for Panorama next year?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So we are making some changes mainly for the how we gather family data. So right now we do what's called, it's not anonymous, it's confidential. So we use the parent information that's in our student information system to create the roster of who gets a survey link, and then we send that survey link out. We've been really trying to go that route so that way we can really guarantee that the only people responding are the ones that are connected within our system. But we also are recognizing that that inadvertently has put a barrier into hearing from some of our families, and we want to make sure we're hearing from as many voices as possible. So we're switching to an anonymous survey. So what that means is we'll have one link for all of our families to access for their survey. So more people will be able to access it. There's one link that every single building is pushing out. One link living on the website. It can really streamline the process. We're going to be adding to that survey all of our demographic questions, kind of what you asked about earlier, Ed. Since we're not pulling from our student information system, we would lose the demographic ability. So we're adding those in as questions so we can still disaggregate our families based on those different identifiers. So that's one change that we're gonna do. Another thing we're hoping to do, we won't know till probably late July or early August, but we've submitted to join a community of practice for staff well-being. This is a partnership through Kaiser Permanente and OSPI to really focus in on, first step is developing a strong district level committee with all stakeholders identified and then engaging in the collaborative work to provide the wellness services that our staff needs through this current time. Just coming out of the pandemic and everything. This is the second year they've offered it. There are only 8 spots, but we got our application in, so hopefully we'll be able to join that and collaborate beyond our walls to move just the culture and wellness of our system forward.
I have one other question. So we have a lot of families where the kids live between 2 homes. Will all of either parent have access?
Yeah, so with the change we're making, anyone has access.
Oh,
It's
even
just
the
gonna be a
community
link that they click on and can take it.
Even community?
Yes, and the intention is they're not experiencing what's going on inside of the classroom or the communication from the staff about their student. And so it's not intended for, community members who aren't connected to the schools to have feedback loop.
But if people are coaches or?
That they have access to,
Yeah,
respond, yes.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking, sorry, while I'm thinking about it, I know previously there were some discussions about some events that occur before school starts. It would be great if we're able to, I would be happy to be helping and disseminate some information, whatever that may look like, flyers or just encouragement of families that I interact with or at events or different things. So just keeping that in mind with our time frames. I know everything will happen fast, but I'm happy to be a part of whatever I can to help kind of get that info out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Some of those events,
The collection period is gonna be, we're adding 1 week to the collection period next year, so it'll be a 3-week window. We did that purposefully to extend it over conferences, so that way we can hopefully catch families when they're coming in for conferences. So it'll be the last 2 weeks of October into the first week of November. And so, there's not really, other than just the communication that letting families know we are still using Panorama and this is when it will be coming out. It'll be really that early October when we're pushing here, it's coming, the link's gonna go live at this date, and really, that's when we can definitely use the assistance with spreading the message.
I just think it'd be cool if we could have some information even in August to talk about it, because going in October when it happens, we want them to already be mindful of it, but there's a lot of preschool events, prior to the school year events that happen, that I think would be a good opportunity for us to be able to like, have those informal conversations to front load that kind of like, hey, you're gonna see these links coming up the next couple months, and anything we can do around that, I think the better we can get people comfortable with the idea that you're gonna be seeing these emails and you're gonna be having these requests come out, and anyways, any opportunity for that I think would be a positive.
Absolutely. What we'll probably do is just draft some of that preliminary talking points information,
Yeah.
so that way all of our buildings can include it in their back to school stuff.
That'd be awesome.
And then once everything's locked in, I'm also hoping to pre-send the survey of, in a week, the link's gonna go live. Wanna start thinking about your
Yes.
responses? Here's what the questions will be. Because we definitely really wanna increase who we're hearing from.
Awesome, thank you.
Uh-huh.
All right, next slide.
Great.
My turn?
Yep. Moves it forward.
This one? Okay. All right, we're gonna talk about goal 3. Goal 3 is success for all students and talks about equitable access and opportunity. These are some things that we've thought about a lot, especially as we dig into our data. And as I mentioned earlier when we began, you see different levels of that data when you look at school improvement plans versus the district improvement plan. This is where we can dig in and see, do we have equitable access at all of our schools? And you'll see in the data, no, not really, we don't. And so we're looking at ways to increase support for the schools where we're not seeing the same level of proficiency for students, because we need to provide them what they need, which may be a little bit more in some of these locations. So we have Megan Swicky will be joining us, and she will be doing some of that work with us around systems and supporting schools, in particular our schools that receive title funding.
It's reverse function.
I think Megan's experience at that secondary level is gonna be really important.
Amazing, yeah, we're happy
Yeah.
to have her working with us on this. This is very similar to the slides that you saw in goal 1. If you remember, goal 1 was about K2. Now we're going to start looking at our data for our 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade students. These slides are used throughout the course of the year. This is the data that we monitor fall, winter, and spring, and it gives us real-time information about if students are progressing as we believe they should be, or do we need to adjust our instruction and do things that are more targeted to meet the needs of our students. The interesting part, when you look at these slides, we're noticing a pattern when you just look at the colors. The blue and the green are at or above grade level. The yellow has become very small in our system. And the above and the red, the well below grade level, are the largest portions now. So this is some important information for us. It's not the picture that we're used to seeing, where there's normally a lot more yellow. So we've done a really great job of moving kids who were close to grade level into that grade level, but we need to put a lot more effort into those students that are further below grade level, right? Well below. So that's a real targeted intervention type of system that we'll continue to work on. The other thing that we've talked about, Carrie talked a little bit about, we have new curriculum. In the past couple of years, we've done a lot of curriculum work at elementary. 2 years ago, we implemented iReady Math. So this has been our full year of implementation. And this year was our first year of implementation for, we call it CKLA, it stands for Core Knowledge Language Arts. And the level of rigor in this curriculum is much higher than the rigor than what we had in our previous curriculum. So when you start with your K1-2, they come in kind of those fresh slates, right? Like they started at the beginning of the program, they're getting all the information. we dumped our third, fourth, and fifth grade students halfway through their elementary career into a new curriculum that has much higher level of expectation. So this has been a challenge, and typically when you implement new curriculum, you get what we call an implementation dip. We're pretty happy to see, and I'll point it out again as we go, we don't really have a dip so much as kind of maybe a little bit stagnant, which is actually really great news when you consider that the students are taking on using material that's much more rigorous. So this is, I told Kara she was gonna have to explain this side. This side is crazy, but again, it just highlights the difference. See the difference where we have so many in the blue and the green and in the red, and the yellow has really shrunk. So it really gives us information about where we need to target our resources for next year. And this information, often we say our spring data collection is more reliable than our fall data collection because the kids haven't been reading and doing their schoolwork over the summer. We have the summer slides, so if they were scoring well below grade level this spring, we can hit the ground running in the fall because they probably haven't just all over the summer gotten all better and all caught up. There's Carrie circles.
I like animation.
There you go.
That's true.
So again, this is similar to what you saw for K2, but now we're gonna look at our middle school students and the progress that we're making with middle school. And I included, over the course of the year, we saw gains, we saw changes. I think all of us look at these numbers and take a deep breath because those are not the numbers that we want to see. So I put in this slide just as a bit of comparison for us to consider. So for each grade level, it will show you the national norms, the national scoring year to date, because this program is used nationwide, and then the Washington year to date scores, and then there's our column there for North Kitsap. So we, just to give it a little bit of context, we're not the only one only district that's working really hard to move our student scores, and in fact, we're typically ahead of the state as a whole.
And this is based on the SBA?
No, this is iReady.
Already.
Yeah, we're gonna get to SBA, or M-Class and iReady, yeah. So the same type of thing that you saw for the younger students, and this is for mathematics. We saw some really nice gains with mathematics this year, which is very encouraging because it's our second year of implementation. So we're getting past that expected implementation dip, and the teachers are feeling really confident. They know what to expect. They've had a lot of professional development. We're getting really great feedback from them in terms of they like the materials and they're feeling better about how students are progressing through them. And here's our 6th through 8th grade. iReady is only available through 8th grade, so we do not use this with our high school students, which makes it in some ways a little bit more challenging for us because we don't have as much data available of this type to work with our high school kids.
So when nationwide, is iReady comparable to the SBA assessment?
So we're tracking that, right? And this is the second year we've used iReady. The correlation is very strong. It's very strong.
I would say if iReady were here, it would be one of their claims to fame. They actually provide us a proficiency report that after we take the January benchmark, it gives us the opportunity to get a prediction on what students will very likely be at standard for the SBA. That's really important information for us, so long as we know what to do with that information from an instructional standpoint.
So here's the comparison again, still leading ahead of the curve, right, with where the state's at, and definitely we all have a lot of work to do. We'd like to see these numbers change. All right, Carrie is gonna talk to you a little bit about student growth.
So this is just a teaching slide, I know you've read it, but just to clarify, typical growth, is something that's used statewide, as a term, and that just means between point A and point B, students move at the level you would expect them to. Stretch growth is what you need to close gaps, meaning they're exceeding the typical growth you would expect in a year. All right, so this chart shows you a little bit of a visual of how we did in the typical growth space. So you can see the percentages of students across all of the grades in 22-23 who met their typical growth as what would be expected. And then for 23-24 at the bottom, and I know you breezed this and you can kind of see where the changes are. Just a reminder, this is different groups of students. This would not be cohort data unless you read it, oopsie, from left to right. So here would be kinders from last year. Here's your second graders who were last year first graders. That's a way to look at it from a cohort lens. And then this is your stretch growth report. We want to see darker blue than what we see here. We want to see higher bars. This is challenging to reach, but it's very reachable. It really comes down to how instruction is delivered, and this is where we as a system need to be supporting our teachers with the training and the strategies and the ongoing support that they need, especially for those groups of students who are performing well below standard. We've got to be reaching stretch growth for them. So to that end, this chart gives you a little sense of where, depending on where you started at the start of the year, if you were a child, for example, in that mid to above grade level, you can see that across the board, growth was outstanding. That was excellent. Dark blue, that's what we want to see. When you move down a little bit, you can see where the pockets are where students made typical growth, and that's great. And you can see those areas where we really didn't have the percentage of students hitting that growth mark that we want to see. When you correlate this to the grade levels where less growth and achievement was demonstrated, you see those pieces come together. So again, that dark blue and that stretch growth approach is where we need to live. Principals know that, teachers are learning that, and that's really where we need to plant our feet.
So another thing to consider as we look at this growth, we know, and research has told us for many years, that what it takes as a small amount of time to teach a primary student, a student early in their educational career, takes much longer to teach if the child, as they get older, right? The intervention that's required as they get to 3rd, to 5th, to 8th, to 10th, it just increases exponentially. So making that kind of stretch growth is harder and harder and harder as the kids get older. But if we don't make the stretch growth, if we just continue the typical growth, it's just parallel. So if I'm well below grade level and I make typical growth, I'm still well below grade level. I'm higher, but every year I continue to be behind grade level. So we need that stretch growth so that we can bring kids up to grade level.
So what are we doing to implement stretch growth?
Well, like I said, it's an instructional approach. So anytime you talk about what we're doing to impact a growth metric, you have to start with MTSS. So what's happening for every child who walks in the building on the academic and the social emotional side under our MTSS, that's where you begin. Every child gets what exactly? Question number 1.
You're talking about the next slide, so I just.
Am I?
Yeah,
Hey,
so pretty darn close.
Yeah, there you go. Good. Oh, Rachel.
I read it.
That's so good.
We're both changing.
So then to answer your question, we have to look at this. We've done the work on the curriculum, right? We've adopted research-based, evidence-based curriculum. Now, we need to look at what happens for the learning experience for children who are well below or well below. So you look at what are they experiencing in core, how much do they belong on their climate and social emotional, you look at those numbers, and then you have to look at how are we intervening in core as well as additional supplemental. And that full package comes together, and it's quite complex, as you know, having been a teacher in the past. I won't get into specifics tonight on what exactly they're doing, but the school improvement plans are the place to go to see what exactly are we doing when we have students who are well below within our MTSS or our CI3T blueprints. That's where that information lives. But it's an instructional answer. So that's the reason we're shifting our focus this year to instructional technique, focusing on cognitive engagement.
And that's a new term to me, the stretch growth.
Yes, it's an I-ready term, actually. We would have called it acceleration.
Oh.
Yeah, it's
Oh.
it's accelerated growth, like Gwen said, where you are expecting students to grow further and faster in a year in order to close the gap.
I mean, it seems to track too, when I look at those middle school years where you don't see as much stretch growth, those are also happen to be the hardest for SEL, I think, in growth that way, so it stands to reason that our kiddos in those age groups you see that different level there. I mean, it's a tough time. Those
It's
middle
also
school
the
years.
place, when you move from primary to elementary or intermediate, the rigor changes, how much content changes, the expectation to write more changes.
Everything's changing.
It really does, it's a reality, so, yeah, I think the data tells us a story, we have to learn more about the story, but it's not a shocking story. What we wanna see though is the impact of the primary coming up and continuing that growth throughout as the curriculum begins to impact our 3 through 5, so.
Yeah, it is interesting how the difference between the K through 2 and the 3 through 5,
Yeah.
and that's kind of how you group your data too,
Yeah.
to go through that. I mean, is any chance there's any difference in MTSS actions for those?
Well, I will tell you, and Craig can speak more to this even than I can, but as students move up, there's a couple things that happen. We do a lot of small grouping and regrouping at K2, and kids are like, yeah, great. But you know what happens when you go to bring a child away from their peers at 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade? What kicks in is the social competencies. They begin to notice that they're getting this or they're getting that. As they move up through the years, that opportunity to intervene it's different. It's just really different. And Gwen and I were talking about this today. That has to be where we turn our focus now, is what exactly, kind of your point, Bev, what exactly at 3 through 5 are we going to do? Because Gwen said it really well today, they're gonna be getting readers now. And so how do we make sure instructionally and through really strong planning, that they are continuing that rigorous, engaging instruction throughout. The kids developmentally though, they're just different. And if you've ever been in an elementary school and spent a lot of time, you know that they get to 3rd grade and it's like, what happened to you over the summer? Because you are not that little one that I thought I knew in 2nd grade. So it is definitely a complex issue, but one that I know once we bring this forward as a high focus area, the schools are equipped to get it done. It's just a matter of finding what it is that we believe will work and adjusting it quickly enough if we're finding that it doesn't. So data becomes absolutely critical, progress monitoring.
All right, we're gonna head into a few slides now that are we're gonna talk about current SEA scores for this spring. And I probably should have made it bigger. There's an asterisk up there and it says preliminary in a couple of places. So we went in knowing that we needed to have our materials ready for this meeting tonight. We went in and grabbed scores off of the OSPI, but not all the scoring is done. And there's always a cleanup period of, and data will change, continue to change. So this will not be the final data that we have in August, but as of June 11th, this was the best read we could get on what was happening with our SBA data. And we have the data presented in 2 different ways here. So you have the chart at the top that shows for the past 3 years at 3rd grade, typically we're seeing how the scores change for 3rd grade. But those aren't the same kids each year at 3rd grade. So the chart on the bottom, we've taken, we've made a graph to show cohort data. So if you were to look at someone who was in 3rd grade, so look at that first box up on the 21, 22, so the 49.8, then the next year when they were in 4th grade, that cohort, that group of students scored 56.8. and then the next year, 58 this year. So you can follow that line to see. One of the things that we're trying to watch very carefully, especially as we see those primary scores start to come up, is as our students, the proficiency levels are higher, we have to maintain that as they get older, right? So we want to see the increase over time, 3rd, 4th, 5th, and then on into, and another big transition is between 5th and 6th grade. A lot of things change for students. Now we have that dashboard that our 6th grade teachers can see how students performed in 5th grade. They can look at all of their previous academic and social history, but we really want to keep an eye on that cohort data as well as just the every year 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade approach.
You know, Gwen, I think that's so important to look at the cohort, because, you know, this year's 3rd graders aren't the same as last year's 3rd grade. But if you can watch that same group of kids over time, you can really see, does our population stay consistent? I've taught in some districts where the population
More
moved
stable
so
here,
much
that-
that it wasn't stable enough to really get that data. And are we pretty stable?
And then we have same conversation for math, all the way up through the high school math scores. And so again, we're watching, if you start in that 3rd grade, that first box on 21, 22, we had 45.6, and then the next year, that same group of students scored 52.4. And preliminary data is looking like 47% for this year. So we'll see where that number actually ends. And we're hoping it goes up, but a lot of the scores were in, so we'll see, right? This is the work that we watch and we wait to see. You can also see, I wanna just reference one more time, this is district-wide, and we see some huge differences between scores in some of our elementary schools. And we see some difference between our middle schools. So the school improvement plan tells a different story than just the overall big picture.
So can we backtrack that group of 10th graders and say, gee, where were they in 7th grade and 4th grade?
Well, unfortunately, we have a big gap because of COVID,
Oh, yeah,
where we had years where we just didn't get the
Okay.
data. And then the test changed.
The test change and then the importance of the test, quite frankly, changes. They don't have to have to graduate. So it is one option to have, and so really,
Wait a second.
and I can let Craig talk about it.
He will in just a minute.
Yeah.
Hang on, we're really close.
Hang on, I'm gonna let Craig talk.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, that is a big change.
Yes.
So we're gonna pivot a little bit to instructional technology. Instructional technology does live within Goal 3, equitable access, largely because what was behind our initiative for going one-to-one was achieving equitable access for all of our kids. So I mentioned when we submitted the mid-year data, or the fall data, that we're using new questions in the instructional technology category this year. That's because last year, both our teachers reported in the over 90th percentile about being able to use the technology, and in the over 90th percentile in designing blended learning experiences for kids. So purposeful use of that technology. So since those scores were where they needed to be, it was time to really take it to the next level, which is purposefully using the technology for skill building for kids. And so that's really what you can see here. We ask about giving students more ownership of their learning and then personalizing the learning, using technology for that, again, building that student agency. And then the other 4 questions focus on using the technology to increase students' communication, collaboration, creativity, and critical thinking skills within the classroom. And so looking through here, we definitely saw a drop across the board. I'm curious when I dive down into these numbers, I'm thinking part of the drop is between fall and spring, conversations about, so now we're going to engage in collaboration, or we're gonna tap into creativity right now. And so I think it's our classroom teachers starting to build the vocabulary with the kids, the meaning behind the question. So, but this is very exciting because really what we've had to, we went one-to-one really out of necessity because of a pandemic. And so our one-to-one model was entirely designed around a pandemic reality. And that pandemic reality needed us to be able to shift at any moment in time to be fully remote, whether it's a building, whether it's a classroom. And so that also is what drove sort of the creation of the model. We're now at that point where we're going to like 2.0, where it's not just about here is access to the device, but how do we purposefully use it to increase student engagement, which is what our large focus is, because that's what the research shows. Technology does not increase student achievement, but it does increase student engagement when done correctly, and that leads to student achievement. And so that's what you can see here. This is what our 3 through 5 students reported, and then the next slide is going to give you our 6 through 12 students. Full plateau here for them, so no changes. I do want to point out in this, this year was sort of a plateau year in the instructional technology world. We went from having a team of 4 instructional specialists supporting our system with technology integration to not having anyone that was their main focus. Now, I don't want to discount the amazing TOSAs that support our system, because they did that in addition to their adoptions and in addition to everything else that they're supporting. Next year, we're able to bring another instructional specialist back into this work, and so we're going to be really able to lean into moving these numbers forward. So I'm really hoping to see a difference between these scores now and then what they say at the end of next school year as well. And then we do teachers instructional technology. Again, this is plateaued data, but they didn't have that job embedded support for coaching and collaborating that they've had the first 2 years that we were one-to-one. So I'm excited to bring that back to them as a resource next year, and hopefully we'll see this plateau not be a plateau anymore, but be an upward trend. We do survey our families. So these are the 2 questions that we ask families. Really, it's just about how's your kiddo talking about how the devices are utilized at school, and then how might your kiddo be using that device at school? Are they using it to engage in learning, or are they just using it for other things such as gaming? And so you can see here our families saw a dip in what our families, this is was not a surprise in regards to especially the model that we've been using. We did 2 big adoptions at the elementary level within 2 years, and those adoptions included digital curriculum. And I think there are families that are concerned about how do we find that balance between using the device in meaningful ways, but not using the device as some sort of babysitter or something to really just turn over to the kids. That is in no way what we want. We want the curriculum utilized and brought to life through the expertise of the teacher. And that's really where the power of instructional technology lies. So based on this data and just really where we are in our cycle, we've made several changes that you all have heard about that we're rolling for next year. Our K-5 devices will come back into the classrooms and stay within the classroom. Again, the reason we didn't do that the first time was we were in COVID. We're not now. So, well, we still are, but not to that level. So we can make those adjustments. We're also making some adjustments by bringing GoGuardian into our environment. That's the monitoring software that will also allow teachers to sort of create guardrails to help students stay engaged in the correct activities instead of maybe wandering off to something else. I'm guilty of that myself, so I can't blame kids for doing it when I go down a rabbit hole often on social media. But we owe it to them to help set those guardrails for them to be more successful. Another big change we're doing is we're adding what's called Clever IDM and Clever MFA to our environment. Clever is what we use for our rostering and our single sign-on program for all of our curriculum. One of the things an issue that we've struggled with, especially at the elementary level, is how do we create password security that allows kids access without creating hindrances to them getting into their learning, while also not making it easy for them to get into other accounts. We do have within our acceptable use policy that accessing other student accounts is a violation. However, we also can recognize that we need to be doing more on the back end, and now we have a way to do that. So Clever MFA is going to allow us to give more control to the classroom teachers in regards to student passwords. but it's also adding a layer of security because kids will be choosing an image that is either an animal or food that is their second layer of authentication. And so if once you enter the password, then you still have to do that two-factor authentication, which is gonna help secure those student accounts. It's also gonna allow us to give our primary kiddos, those kindergarten, first and second graders that are still learning their letters and knowing where things are on a keyboard, we'll have login options available to them that are QR code based, not based on their knowledge of letters and numbers. And so that also will help bridge that equitable access gap for kiddos that maybe don't have those skills yet. So big changes on the horizon, exciting ones that we're
So
excited
K
for.
through 5, the computers are gonna stay at school.
They will stay at school unless if a family lets us know that they utilize that resource for equitable access from home. We don't want to deny the family that, because that is one of really the underpinnings of our program is equitable access. And so if a family lets us know, then that child will still be allowed to take their device home, much like we've allowed right now families who don't want the device to go home to keep the device at school in the library.
Can we prevent the kids from using it on the bus?
Well, if the vast majority are staying at school, then there's not gonna be, wouldn't be an issue. The tricky part for us on the bus is that crosses over into parent time, and so.
Parents have the ability to do that. They can limit what time those devices are
Okay.
accessible. So-
Yeah.
So that would be really important for parents to know how to do.
Yeah, well,
Jeremy's gonna have, there's gonna be, he did this year too, and hopefully next year it'll be better attended. But we've had a couple of different technology nights where those answers can be answered, and, I know we had multiple demonstrations, and tables, and has met with everybody that has requested to meet with him this year to go over those, proactive strategies that parents and families can use with students.
It's really important. Parents need to access this. We have ways to help them.
Absolutely right, and it's also, we need to help everyone start to reframe what is the reality now. The reality now is to engage in learning, kids are gonna have to be on technology somewhat. And so, as parents, and I say this as a parent of 4 kids within our system, I take that into consideration when I consider how much at-home screen time am I gonna get. So like, they fight me on it, but I won't give a certain amount of time access at home because I need their screen time to be focused on their learning. And it's a shift that we're seeing right now, but one that I don't feel is gonna go away.
I mean, I guess I was actually pleasantly surprised by the responses on that, because if you look for the first question where you say 50% responded favorably, like if you look at one of the ones in the red, I mean, so if they responded slightly positively, to me, we're doing positively.
Mhm.
So I don't know why we're pulling that score down. I look at it and I see a overwhelming, positive response, for that question.
I would agree with that. That's something, this one we actually can change. When we originally drafted this question, which is why we haven't changed it, because when you change it, now you can no longer use your historical data. But one of the reasons we didn't change it is, from my perspective, is I want as an instructional leader with innovative technology and learning, somewhat positively to me isn't a win. You know what I mean? Like, I want kids taking ownership, and it's a pipe dream maybe, but it's something we're gonna strive to every day. I want kids taking ownership of that learning and being super excited. So somewhat for me, but that's something we can, as a team, we control these questions.
I just don't want us to take drastic measures, where we're gonna limit access to those devices. Those are critical for a lot of kids within the district.
Absolutely.
Yeah, just to add on that though, we did survey and talk to the principals about this, and they were overwhelmingly in favor of having devices remain at school because they've had so many families want that. So the choice will be there, but for the younger students, we did dig in a little bit and find out what the stories were at the schools before any decision was made on that, and it was unanimous.
Yeah, some of our, like for instance, using Boost, or iReady MyPath, those adaptive programs that help close the gap for kids. Families who want their kids to be able to do that at home, like, will still have that opportunity. Kids will be doing it at school as well, but we don't ever want a policy or procedural change to increase inequities. That's definitely not the direction we want to go.
So WIDA, again, we only have preliminary SBA scores right now, and there's an, if you read under the chart, it says if they score at least a 4.3 on WIDA and pass the SBA, then they can exit. So we can't make some of the determinations on this data until we get the final SBA data. And I'm gonna let you, or you have read these. I do wanna jump in with something, some information that we received after this was already posted on the agenda. On Tuesday, OSPI had a news release about the Washington School Recognition Program, and the fact that you could, schools were being identified as a recognized school for closing the gap for growth and for achievement. So we have some good news to share. For the 21-22 school year, Pearson Elementary, Paulsbo Elementary, and Vinland Elementary, all are schools being recognized for one of those categories.
One or more.
One or more, right? So we'll have a big celebration about this. The schools are gonna get banners, and we're gonna play this up big, but it's breaking news, and I wanted to share since we're talking about.
So that was Pearson, Vinland, and
Paulsbo. For
That's
21,
two of our
22,
largest schools.
right? Gets better in 22, 23.
There's more.
Yeah, there's more. For 22, 23, Pearson, Options, Paulsbo Elementary, Paulsbo Middle School, and Suquamish Elementary School are being recognized.
Great.
So there's pages of schools that are being recognized. I may have looked at our surrounding districts. We have more. Go North Kitsap, right? So
Another
you'll
good
be hearing
reason to
more
stay
about
in
this.
North.
Pardon me?
Another good reason to stay in North.
There you go. All right, so I'm gonna turn it over. Finally, Craig gets a turn.
Sorry, Craig.
Yeah,
I
all for.
apologize.
In our next agenda item.
Yeah, right.
All right, so graduation, so you're looking at the graduation chart. Remember, that number on the far right is from last year's graduating class. We won't get numbers for this year's class until probably early November, and I can come back and update you on where we ended up. But as you look at it, 88.2 for last year's class, slightly behind the previous year, but to go back to the pre-COVID year would be 18-19. So since then we've been in COVID, but we've also had the benefit of some waivers. So for the past 5 years, the state has allowed us to waive certain aspects for students, whether it be credits or their graduation pathway. I think that goes back to, the question you had, Beth, about the SBA and being required. So the SBA is not a requirement. You don't have to pass the SBA to graduate from high school. However, you do have to have a graduation pathway, of which the SBA is one of them. You can also use the SAT with a certain score, the ACT. You can take a advanced placement course. You can take the ASVAB. You can take what's called a Bridge to College course. All have different requirements for different grades or scores in order for that to count as your pathway. You can also take a sequence of 2 CTE courses, and that also counts as a pathway. So students have many options in order to meet their graduation pathway. SBA is one of those to do.
So they can opt not to even take it.
Well, we try not to have them opt out because we're interested in the data and really just want to see where they are. So we do encourage every student to take the math and the ELA pass SBA to start their pathway. That then leads us down different paths with students. before we come to the very end and have to make some tough choices. But those waivers have ended though with this graduating class. So no longer are we able to waive core credits or their pathway. We still have the option to waive 2 elective credits if they have a hardship or something else has happened. So. Okay. The other metric we look at is our 9th graders on track. Again, this will get updated, so this is last year's number, but you can see the pre-pandemic number of the 18-19 of 79%. Most everybody got all their credits once the pandemic started, and then we started to build back up. So 9th grade year, very important year to get kids off on the right track, and so our high schools are always watching to make sure as many kids as possible can earn their 6 credits in that first year, so that they are on track to graduate at that point. We've got options if they're not, or if they fail a class, but we'd rather get it done on the first round instead of trying to scramble to have other options for them to either recoup that class in credit recovery, pass the next class and use a mastery-based option, or take a summer school class to make it up. There we go, still online, yep. So pretty similar to last year, we're expanding the use of the dashboard. So this year our teachers are now able to go in and look at the dashboard and they can see their students, particularly their advisory kids, to really keep track of where they're at and make sure they're getting the help that they need so that they stay on track for graduation. To note, and John will like this, we have expanded our CTE pathways. So we added those 3 pathways this year. And we have also added additional college and high school courses for next year. At both schools, they'll have more options for students to earn dual credit. So a high school credit and a college credit, so they can take that with them if they choose to attend an institution 2 or 4 years after they graduate from us. So and we're going to continue to expand and offer more and more and more college and high school classes in the future.
So if you're struggling with math,
yep,
you can still take that health science pathway, but do they have special math classes they take to be able to keep up with the expectations?
So when you're in a CTE pathway, those count both as an English pathway and a math pathway. And they're articulated to have those standards embedded in them. So students are learning the math skills, reading and writing skills, speaking and listening skills are all embedded in those classes to really make the kids job ready or career ready when they leave us.
And really just well-rounded, it sounds like.
I think it's exciting to create some of the CTE pathways, and talk about which high school those are going to be in to offer more.
Yes, now you're putting me on the spot. So we are adding the biomedical sciences at Kingston High School. John, remind me of the other ones.
Health sciences, which is the biomedical,
Right.
and then we'll also be offering the ecology natural resource pathway is new out of Kingston.
Keystone High School. And I think the only reason I was saying that, that's really important, just for the elective options. I know that's something that we've heard, around, having equity and having the options that maybe North Kitsap High School has, and having Kingston also have, those same type of options, maybe not the exact same classes, but their very own pathways that they could make their own and own those. Sorry, I should've let Craig end on it, but I had to talk at one, and they did such a good job, I had to talk. Yeah, are there questions for the team before they get to step away from the microphones?
Questions?
Well, I'm just a little more interested in what's happening in 8th and 9th grade so that the 10th grade SBA math will get the support it needs? Because I'm wondering, is that math test at 10th grade, is it geared towards kids that are going into engineering at college level? I mean, is it way beyond what a regular person would need in everyday life? Or, I mean, and I know 10th graders can sometimes blow these things off and say, I don't know, choose A, you know, instead of working it out. But it just seems like, I mean, that score going from 42% down to 32, I mean, that's not very many kids that are proficient.
I will speak from experience. I feel, you know, both my children are pretty good students and stuff, and I still have to talk to them about why it's important to take and perform well on the SBA. I don't know why we have to continue to keep pushing that message, but it just is what it is, so.
Is that part of the?
And I think as students keep progressing up higher levels and they're kind of looking at what their pathway is and stuff, and maybe they're making the decision on their own, so just continuing to educate them on the benefits of it, like you talked about. That's just my personal.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. Would say the 10th grade SBA is set heavily in algebra and geometry. And so those are the skills that test is assessing. And so, yeah, I mean, as we've seen and as we know through, we have a struggle in math, not only in our community, but statewide and nationwide, and it's concerning. And it's something we have to continually look at and figure out what the right path is to get kids interested in doing math and just working through the problems. But yeah, we're not alone in this, unfortunately.
I think anecdotally too, like I would say that again, those ages, when you look at that 10th grade age of everything else going on in our life, and are they getting balanced sleep? At that age, I'd say possibly not. Or are they get, you know, like all the things that it takes to get there are tricky at that age. Or I will, from my household stance, that's just a tough age to, you know, like you said, to encourage them and to really make sure it happens. It's also where I see a lot of mental health impacts really kind of come to light, I think, in that kind of age range. And so it's tricky when you have kids struggling with anxiety in different areas. Testing is hard. Testing is overwhelming, can be kind of that tip of the iceberg for those kiddos at that age. So I think there's so much that plays into it. That's been my experience anyways with in my home, that 10th grade, you're just like trying to keep it going.
And I think you would hear from the majority of educators, our teachers, our administrators, one test at one point in time is a pretty poor way to measure a child's intelligence.
Because of all those reasons, like so much that goes into it. It's not just that one test.
Okay, any other questions?
Well, I've got some more questions for you down the road, but down to these quantitative tests that we're putting into, saying, okay, you're gonna tell us in this 1 hour everything that you know. When we've got kids with test anxiety and we're putting everything on a number that pops out of that system. Where there's so many other ways to test.
I will say one of the beauties of using our data dashboard the way we're using it right now is it gets away from that one metric defining a child. You can go in and we can see the academic data, but then we can also see the strengths in SEL and tap into those strengths and amplify that. And so that's one of the amazing things that I think as a district that we are doing, is not relying on single metrics to determine how kids are performing and how they're succeeding.
Well, I know the regulators kind of push us into that.
Yeah.
Yes, they
No,
do.
we
Yeah,
consider
there's
it's part of the
participation
story, but it's
and
not the
accountability
story.
piece. Yes.
It is still a high stakes assessment,
Yes.
whether we like
Yeah.
it or not. This is,
Yep.
Well, thank you all for your presentation.
Thank you.
And your time.
Yeah, I'll just, again, I know how much of an undertaking this is to go through this, so thank you very much for putting this together. I mean, I think this is a great way to kind of, wrap up the school year, transition into the new school year, and just hope they continue to encourage the staff to, be vulnerable, and so that we can look into that data and dig into it. But I think we're on a good direction at this point. Thank you. Okay, so the next agenda item is public comments. Yes. So we have one person signed up for the first period, and then we have a second person signed up in the second period. So the first person will be in person. Okay, so the North Kitsap School Board of Directors welcomes the public to this open public meeting. In accordance with board policy and state law, board meetings must be conducted in a civilly, orderly, and business-like manner, which means we must all follow the same standard of civility during school board meetings. We value public comments. If you would like to speak to potential items on the agenda, you may sign up to speak using the sign-up sheet that are included on the meeting agenda and on the school district's website. Both virtual and in-person attendees may sign up for public comment. The board sets aside a maximum of 2 30-minute public comment periods per meeting. Speakers wishing to comment on agenda items will be prioritized in the first public comment period to allow for the board to hear comments prior to board action or consideration. Individual speakers will have 3 minutes for their comments. Speakers may not donate some or all of their time to another speaker, and the person who signed up to comment should be the same person who addressed the board. No speaker may speak more than once per meeting, even if there is time remaining. Though the board will not respond to statements, questions, or challenges made during the public comment period, the board may ask district staff to contact the speaker at a later time to follow up on issues raised during the public comment period. When it's your turn to speak, please approach the podium if you are in person. If you are commenting via Zoom, you'll be promoted to panelists on Zoom. You must then turn on your video and microphone to make public comment. Finally, please remember that your words have impact. We value our community's feedback, and we welcome your comments. Thank you. Okay, so again, the first speaker this evening will be Scott Hendon.
Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. I attended several of the pre-bond meetings trying to get a feel for what was going on, and I attended the 2 facilities meetings that we've had so far. The one on Tuesday night, it's still pretty short on details or costs that people are gonna need to make good decisions. But what I heard repeatedly was the last fiasco was the result of one person's actions. And that may or may not be, but really the tone of the message was, they are gone, now you gotta trust us. And that leaves me with a couple of conclusions. One is either the board and staff and consultants didn't ask, didn't know, didn't follow up with the right questions, where they were complicit in what happened. So the meeting to do that is, okay, where's the trust? We've all had trust broken in our life, either family or friends or business. Trust lost is much harder than trust regained. And for me, I'm not ready to say, oh, I trust you now because one person is gone, because I think there's too many adults, many in this room, that went along with the last program. And I'm not ready to say, oh, okay, we're all good now. If we look at Pearson, if we look at decisions at Bridal Blake, if we look at what was decided at Wolfley, what we've been told about access at Lone Maple, if we look at the purchase up on Slippery Pig, I think all of them are questionable. I won't use the word lying, but it seems like information was definitely left out and distorted. And we are responsible as people, and we expect our students to be responsible, that we have a role to play. And if we see an accident and we know, or if we see a crime, we have a responsibility to step forward and say, I am not accepting that, and I will be part of the solution. So what does that look like? Why should I trust you? And I know 2 of the board members are new, and I'm gonna give you a little slack for that, but board members, by the superintendent, by staff, that this was the way things were last time. And now we find out, just Pearson as an example, we can rebuild on Pearson, yeah, that'll work. And we were told adamantly it would not work. We were told adamantly, there's no access on Low Maple, you can't use that. So, I hope the new board members and the old will take a hard look, because, community has appealed, and I don't think trust is there. And I'd like it to be. I'd like to be hopeful that you as elected officials would ask questions and demand answers. And if you don't get answers, you're responsible. Let's remember that.
Thank you, your time's expired.
This board extended the last superintendent's contract well after.
Thank you, your time's expired.
You're welcome, thank you.
All right, the next agenda item is the consent agenda. Consent agenda items 6.1.1 through 6.1.9. Emotions, oh, excuse me, I skipped a couple there. Sorry. All right, so the next item is board comments. Does any board member have a comment they would like to share with the rest of the board? So I'd actually like to start. And you might be speaking about this, but obviously our school district and our community lost an important member. Mr. Coach Snyder, you know, depending on how they knew him, was important to a lot of students academically, athletically. So just wanted to take a moment to just, you know, recognize all the communities that he made to our school district and to the community, just to know that you know, his family, that our thoughts and prayers are with them, and I hope that we can find a way to recognize his contribution he made to the district, and then we can you know, keep that alive within the district somehow too. So I think you know, at the appropriate time we can think about what are the options for that, but I think it's very important to continue to remember. I mean, he had a huge impact on the school. That was very obvious at the you know, the community that showed up to recognize him. So just looking forward to figuring out a way to do that in the future.
Good idea. I have a comment. So I was very impressed when I walked through the construction site at Paulville Middle School. It's wonderful to see that a capital levy can do so much to improve our buildings. There'll be 8 new classrooms and a design that connects the gym and lunchroom to the main building, so the kids aren't going outside during transitions. So I hope that everyone gets that chance at open house to come and see the new building, and it's gonna be a fabulous addition to our school district.
I was able to attend the community facility meeting the other night as well. I was happy to see one held both in Paulsville and one in Kingston. I think that was really great. I would like to see a little bit more attendance, but we had some folks there that had some really good boots on the ground knowledge of the needs of our facilities and our schools. So I just really was grateful to be able to listen in and sort of see that process in action, I guess. This is my first kind of go through for what I know to be the upcoming levy. So that was really great. And yeah, I do also, I'm not familiar myself, but I will say the impact that Coach Snyder had is helpful in the community. Just social media alone, I mean, to read the comments, it's pretty amazing to see one person have such an impact. So our hearts are with everybody who's touched by him and in their life, and just sounds like what a wonderful legacy he has. I'm sad to hear.
I didn't know Coach Snyder personally, but I certainly know of his influence, and my condolences to his friends and family. And we, as a district, have lost a great soul. I too was able to do a walkthrough at the middle school, and I was impressed with, first off, the quality of the instruction, the construction, and the thoughtfulness that went into that design. And I also thought, I was really surprised at the budget. I thought the budget would be much higher than what it was for that, for what the district is getting. I think it's a great value.
Okay, so next is board reports. Does any board member have a report to share in regard to their assigned liaison position?
I don't, unfortunately, I was kind of bummed I had to choose between meetings on Tuesday, so the timing was not in my favor, but I like to attend the IPIC meetings and was unable to, but I'll be at the next month's one as basically posted for the upcoming school year.
Okay, next is superintendent report. Richard Davenport, would you please provide your comments to the board?
Just, again, the school district lost, and Edward, I love how you said an amazing soul. The world lost an amazing man, and our condolences with his family and friends. A small recognition, this is the first year we've held a STEM camp, and I know John Waller had a lot to, back there giving us little fists up in the air, had a lot to do with putting that together. And it's fairly amazing. We have one going on each side of the district, and this week's our first week, and lots of smiling faces. I know John's been on site each day, and so congratulations to him and the staff and all the families that are participating in our STEM camp. I feel like we have to expand it next year. Just listening to the team we had up here, a huge thanks to the report that they put together for you all. I know there was a lot of effort on their part. And I will just tell you, my office has moved to a little closet down here, and it's pretty lonely. And I'm walking by the windows here yesterday, and they were practicing giving the speech, and I was like a proud parent watching them do that. And it was just much appreciated because they know how important it is to get this information out. So it means a lot to me to see them working so hard in getting that information and getting those questions answered. Part of their report, I know they referenced it numerous times, curriculum adoptions are huge, and it is a huge lift for our staff that are providing the instruction inside of the classrooms. And for our elementary folks, having 2 years back-to-back of curriculum adoptions, just amazing work of our teaching staff and our paraeducators to lift that and get it going, and the amazing support that our district office and our TOS has provided our staff there. We have an exciting event coming up. It is one of the things that we've been talking about as a team is student voice and student belonging. I think one of you had asked a belonging question on one of our slides, and a lot of times it's easy to listen to student voice, and then what do we do next with what we heard? How do we take action on what we heard? One of the things we are doing is working in partnership with our community to host a Latin festival, and it's going to be held at North Kitsap High School on September 14th. And part of that really is working with our student voice and having those festivals led and put on by our students. And so as we get more information for that, something to be very proud of, having our students lead these type of events. So wanted to make you aware early. And then I don't want to spoil Mike. I feel like I'm taking everybody's words tonight. Spoil Mike's board report at the very end, but just a huge thank you to our Facilities Advisory Committee. The Tuesday night, I popped in over at bless you, over at the community forum, and again, I'll steal Mike's words. It's not often you get a lovely sunny night in June, and it was a gorgeous night. And folks were in there to work for hours, and they have put countless hours in, so thank you to our Facilities Advisory Committee.
Okay, all right, so now we move on to item 6.1, the consent agenda. A motion is needed to approve the consent agenda. Do I have a motion?
I so move.
Okay, thank you, Edward. And we need a second for the motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, thank you. Motion has been made and seconded. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Okay, and aye. All opposed to the motion? None. The motion passes with a vote of 4 and 0 against. And I actually should have mentioned in the beginning, Director Martinez is excused this evening, so that's why we only have 4. Okay, the management reports will be turned over to Interim Superintendent Rachel Davenport and staff to answer any questions the board has regarding the materials provided.
Absolutely, and I'm just gonna ask some of our team to come up and sit in the front row in case you do have questions. So our first one is our monthly budget status report, and this is our budget status report for May, put together in similar fashion to each month. So if you have questions, Mike Merlino is available to answer those.
Any questions on the status report? Okay.
Our next report is our CTE end of the year report, and I know you saw John proud of the STEM camp, and he is here if you have any questions for our CTE management report.
I have a question. So, John, can you give us some examples of how the leftover CTA funds were used, that 223,000?
So when we're working with the CT budget, what we do is there's a method to the madness, if you will. When we look at developing budgets for our programs, we look at the 5-year plans, we look at what the programs have spent, and then we look at what the needs are. We have a rotation of different projects that we use extra money for, ranging from first year. I'll give an example. We remodeled our own den. We've done many different computer labs, and because we still are using some of the high-powered computer labs for our engineering and our video and stuff, so we have to continue to keep those up to speed. We've done some remodeling of some of the different programs where we have to meet industry standard through CTE, so we have to constantly be upping the quality of equipment, making sure that it's meeting industry standards. So when these kids go through the program, when they step out, they've had some experience with something that they're gonna actually be utilizing when they step out. So the budget is based around the need of those programs, as well as our staff. We pay for our staff and all aspects that go with that and that part of our programs in CT.
Great. And so we have 19 more dual credits with Olympic College next year. And is that just at the high school level in both high schools?
It's at the high school. It's between both North and Kingston. Depends on the program. What we have to do is we'll turn in our frameworks, and we work with Olympic College. They put them with their program advisors and teachers, and we look at making this program has to meet 80% or better of what they would get at the college level. If that's determined, then we get that articulation agreement. Students get their high school credit and CT credit, and then they can, what we do is we enroll them through the Cedars program at Olympic College, and they'll gain up 5 or sometimes more credits depending on how many are afforded that they will transcript and can take with them once they post-secondary.
So these are 19 credits, not 19 classes.
No, the classes it depends on how many classes. The credits are, if it's like a a year-long class, they can get up to 5 credits at Olympic College. So if we have, 19 different classes that have, the number of credits that are available vary. Our culinary program alone, if the kids take all 4 of those classes, all 4 years, can get up to 17 college credits with the articulation agreements we have.
Wow.
So they have to choose to do that, and they have to get a B or better in our courses in order to do that.
And that would be part of one of our pathways.
Absolutely.
So that would be a pathway of
Yep.
So the articulation, real quickly, thanks for bringing that up, Rachel. When we do, to build a CT pathway or a CT graduation pathway, Greg mentioned that there has to be 2 classes in the same program. Our programs are Ag, Foods, Natural Resource, Skilled and Tech, Health Sciences, STEM, Engineering, Business and Marketing. They're all the different program areas, and we have all our classes that are built within those program areas. So if you take, for example, our Ag classes, they're the easiest ones to remember because that was my old program. So basically, if you take your Ag program and you take an Animal Science and a Crop Science or a plant science, that's 2 classes. The animal sciences, if it's articulated or has an industry recognized cert attached to it, that builds that, graduation pathway for that student. So that's that. If there's an articulated class, like for example, in our marketing, if they take entrepreneurship and marketing, marketing has an articulation with OC, that builds that graduation pathway.
Oh, well.
So we have a variety of those.
Yeah, on that cross-credit metric,
Mhm.
it seemed like a lot of the credits were for electives or science. It seems like you could justify math in a lot of those areas. Is there ways that we could get maybe more math?
So
credit?
the way we get our equivalency credits is we go through the board approved policy and procedure. And we have to bring both sides of the coin to the table, if you will. So what we have to do is we look at the framework. Every one of our CT frameworks is built with all standards. There are industry standards, engineering standards, we use that as an example. And then on top of that, we put in all the math standards that we may be hitting, all the science, all the tech, all the different English language, all the different standards that we and those students will be achieving within that framework, within that class. We have to come to the table with that. We'll bring counselors from both sides. We'll bring the department head from whatever department, whether it be math or science, from each, myself, Craig Berry. We sit down, we look at the framework, we look at all the standards, and we as a team decide, is this and does it meet enough to acquire or be equal to what would be needed to maintain a math credit or a science credit. And that's how the process is. So we go through that with all of them. If we feel that we have and we meet that standard level, we'll put it in front of that process or that procedure and go through the realms to see if we can make that happen, and that's how we do it. Science it's CT, it's career and technical education. There's a lot of science, a lot of technology, a lot of STEM in there, if you will. The math is a little bit tougher, because we have to cover a lot more math.
Because it seems like to be a lot of algebra and geometry in
It depends
those.
on
the
which
class.
class.
Yeah.
Our 3rd year engineering class, we were able to offer equivalency with math because of the engineering and the math that is in there. But when you're looking at, our marketing will have some math, but we won't need enough math to meet that standard for the state to give that math credit. And so we look at that, and we've looked at them, but we just haven't quite there. Some of them we've been able to go back and build up and then come back and try again with what is asked for, what is needed, and we've been able to do it. But it's always in process, it's always in flux. It's a living document.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, John. Our next report is our Title IX report, activities and athletics. Are there any questions that Craig Berry can answer?
I just had a quick question. I noticed on there, it indicates that it doesn't include cheerleading and dance participation in the numbers. So
why is that, right?
Yes.
Yes, so the Office of Civil Rights, those people that work out in Washington DC, they do not, it's been through the courts, and I don't know the court cases, but they have not deemed cheerleading as a sport. So that's not us, that's the courts and the feds going through, and it's, in their eyes, it's an activity. And so that's why they include them in the numbers. We do have approximately 80 student athletes, middle school and high school, that participate in some form of cheerleading, stunting, those type of activities. But at this current time, they don't meet the standard to be counted as a sport.
Okay.
Not us, but that's,
No,
yeah,
I
I'm
understand.
not gonna debate.
Yeah, I will
that. I'm
point
not
out,
gonna-
Craig called them student athletes.
Yes.
We absolutely
Yeah.
believe that
So-
they are.
Insinuate
Yeah.
that.
So that's the main reason why, the Office of Civil Rights doesn't count it, and they take it into court, and it hasn't changed yet, so.
Do they count dance and gymnastics?
They count,
Gymnastics
gymnastics is
counts,
considered a
It
sport.
seems like a lot of
It's-
cheerleading
yep,
is dance
somebody-
and
yep.
gymnastics.
So I think it's important to bring that out, to realize that these numbers, I don't think 100% accurately represent it, it's just, I saw one of the comments in there, regarding, C teams, for male athletes. I'd hate for us to, pull back on their participation if, the numbers don't totally represented?
We have a ways to go to meet proportionality, between our male and female students. It would be, there's no sport that competes with football that you can institute in order to make up the disproportionality that's there. But we do have opportunities, for female athletes to participate in sports, so there's no restriction. We would gladly add a C team basketball team. We have C team volleyball. If the WIA would approve girls flag football, we would definitely entertain adding that. Right now, we have a club at North Kitsap. There is the intent to add a club at Kingston High School, and I would probably come back and ask to add them officially as a sport if the WIA would sanction it as a sport.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep an eye on that as a WI rep. I think it was interesting because, everybody was surprised, you know, that it didn't get approved, yet there wasn't really a participation, or, you know, the effort to actually get it approved, so I think there's a decent chance, yeah. I think it'll get a chance, and I think that's something we could see some pretty significant participation in. Seems like there's some good interest in it.
Mike, when does, sorry, I saw that came up, when does the vote, so when does that happen again, where that opportunity will come around?
Yes.
It happens in the spring, amendments are put forth in the fall, and then they're gone through, and then, quote me on this, I think the leagues vote, or they vote through their membership through WIA to either approve amendments or, not approve amendments.
Yeah, so assuming it would be a fall, sport, it probably wouldn't happen for this school year, it would probably be next one, I think.
I'm just thinking we'll have to look out for any opportunities to support that, I know there's a
Yeah.
lot of interest there, and I'm happy to hear you say that that's a goal of ours, so.
That's it. Thank you.
Our next report is on our use of force. It's a state required report that we have to provide this information to the state, and typically Lori Boughton is the person that collects this data for our district. Is there any questions on this? Okay. Our next two reports actually have Mike Merlino come on up. The one I know we discussed a little bit is that state audit report, and going through the entire report. Any questions?
I'm just gonna go and say it again, I thought it was a fantastic report, and, just, you know, goes to speak, how, closely all this information is tracked, and it's good to hear that, and, you know, the fiscal responsibility and earning the trust of the community and the parents and school district, I think this goes a long way, so, obviously, I think we've already recognized Renata, but again, it's worth saying, great job.
I just thought maybe, I was excited to also note the cost savings due to the diligence of the staff and the team that put it together with, participated. So the initial estimated cost was $75,000 and the actual of $64,000, and in the world of, schooling and our kids, $11,000, I think is a good savings, so I think that was, it's a highlight that I appreciated. And pointed out due to the great work of the staff, so.
Yeah, Mike, your team is very professional and well-versed in what they need to do, and that's, really takes the load off of us. Thank you.
And I just want to say that, that team was here before I was here, so they do a great job. Renata, Laura, Shelley, Jody, all, but it's across the district. Val manages grants, people that work in there, so it's a team effort, definitely.
Thank you. Our last report is to talk about a capital levy resolution.
So I prepared a management report kind of talking about a capital levy. We've talked about it in previous meetings. I'll talk a little bit about that, and then I also want to talk a little bit about the last couple weeks with respect to meetings and the facilities committee as well. The capital, there's a little more urgency with respect to the timing and the number of meetings that we've been having, because the election that we're targeting is November 4th I think it's November 4th, I don't know if it's even November 4th, it's the Tuesday in November, election day, that we would be talking about a capital levy. In order for us to get that on the ballot, we have to pass a resolution at the board level by August 6th. So the meeting where you would be considering that is the July 25th board meeting, which means a week before that, you need to actually have an official resolution in front of you that you can take a look at and review. So we kind of started talking about this at the facilities committee, because there were people on the committee that were interested in bonds, capital levies, what's the difference between the two, what should we consider. I think early on the committee determined that we needed more time. I think one of the things we've talked about building trust with the community. We want to certainly build trust, continue to build trust with the community. That is something that takes time. It's not something that happens in a month or 2 months or 3 months. And so that was the real reason that we considered, if we were gonna run a bond, that it needed to be down the road a little bit, so that we had the opportunity for the facilities committee to do the work and actually go through all of these jobs that are required transparently with the community before we got to that point. That, I think, very early led the committee to the idea that a capital levy made the most sense. And if you remember, when the district passed the capital levy in 2022, it was a 4-year levy with, I think it was approximately 13 million in 2023, 14 million in 24. Those are round numbers, it's not exactly those numbers. And then dropped down in 25, and then stayed down in 26. And the drop was with the idea that in 2024, a bond would be run, and the bond would make up that rate to keep a flat tax rate. And so obviously that didn't occur. What was presented to the committee was the concept of running a capital levy back to the point that we bring that number where it was 13, 14, 4, 3, back up to basically 13, 14, 15, 16. So for the first 2 years of the levy, run for numbers like 10 million, 11 million, right in that range, which would keep the levy rate flat for the taxpayers and allow us to continue to do the capital renewal work that's been being done since the capital levy was passed in 2018. A different thing that was added then was another thing that I don't think districts typically don't want to run a lot of elections, because when you run too many elections, it can be kind of confusing. And so in the capital levy, there are 2 components. There's the infrastructure capital renewal part of the levy, and then there's also the technology part of the levy. So the technology is important for us to continue. You heard a lot of conversation today about the technology work that's ongoing right now in the district with the one-to-one initiative. So what the concept was discussed at the committee level was to actually run a 6-year capital levy, 2 years at the number increasing up to a larger, like 10 million, 11 million, and then dropping down that number so it's just technology for the next 4 years, and lining up a moment in time where if the board and the district determines that we want to run either a bond or another capital levy, after this facilities committee does the work and outlines the work and presents it to you, presents it to the community, it would set us up for the possibility to run something in 2026. Now, we have an EP&O levy renewal in 2026. We would naturally have a capital levy renewal in 2026. If there was an interest in running a bond, I think the feeling was that 3 separate measures at the same time isn't really in the best interest of what we're trying to do. And so that's why we look at a 6-year capital levy, 2 years capital renewal, and then the last 4 years technology. So we talked about that at the committee level at the meeting earlier in the month. We talked again about it last night, and the committee endorsed that. I had hoped that some members would be here today as well, but we, to answer questions that you might have about the committee, I'm glad that a couple of you were able to be at some of the meetings that we had, the forums that we had, to see Really, I think one of the most impressive things to see is exactly what Rachel alluded to, is the commitment from the committee and the number of people that have been participating as committee members at these meetings, and being willing to stand up in front of the group that is there and explain the process and the work they've done, being happy to sit at tables with community members and answer their questions and talk about the experience. So we have another meeting, a facilities committee meeting, I think that's gonna happen on the 11th of July. And the 15th, the 15th I think is a community meeting, yeah. So we've
the
got,
18th is community.
yes,
like,
so we
yes.
got 2 more facilities committee meetings before the resolution will be brought to you. And another community forum. So we have had the 2 community forums. The first was the meeting at North Kitsap High School, and then we did one at Kingston here this Monday, or Tuesday, I guess it was. The next meeting is gonna be all, by Zoom, and we'll welcome the community. We'll have the ability for people to ask questions in the chat room, and interact with people that way, so that we can get more people involved that don't have to come in and can just get online and participate. So what I hoped us to do at the facility, there was unanimity around capital levy. There's unanimity around running this type of levy, a 6-year levy with these numbers. What I want us to do is, as a committee, kind of write a statement and have the members of the committee vote, so you actually have that as well. Obviously, it's the board's decision ultimately what they choose to do, but the committee felt like it's important to make that recommendation to the board and share that information. And I think we'll see if we can get members to come to that meeting as well.
I saw, and I don't know if you wanna hear from a community member, but I saw the community, the advisory committee member name pop up across the top, and I don't know if you wanna hear from a committee member as well. I know we asked them to be here and everybody's lives are super busy, but it's like.
Yeah, I mean, that's up to you, it's part of your presentation.
Yeah, if anybody's
Yeah.
interested.
I think it was Jewel.
I was gonna say, Jewel I knew was gonna
Jewel
zoom
was
in,
on.
so yeah,
I saw.
if she's willing to do that, that'd be awesome.
I think I have to do something here. This one?
I believe I am unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yeah, we just have some feedback we're working through, but if you wanna go ahead, thank you.
Kettler.
Go ahead, Jewel.
Okay, you can't hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, great. I can echo everything that Mike said. It is reflective of the discussions that the committee has been having, as well as discussions that hopefully can, be reflected with the board in terms of what's been brought up, as far as, trust and being transparent with the recommendations that, we make to the board when we are able to make those recommendations. As Mike said, we have 2 more committee meetings and 1 community meeting. It's a lot of work. Our next committee meeting, which I thought was July 10th, but now I have to confirm with my date was the 11th. We will be coming to the meeting, at least a fair number of us, members will be coming to the meeting with our recommendations based off of what we've seen, and then we'll be having a discussion as a committee and really just trying to drill down what we could feasibly do with the levy and how can we plan for the future in a way that is economically responsible and allows for growth and many more things. Does anyone have any specific questions?
I know, but I do recognize it's a lot of meetings and I just appreciate it, thank you.
I can't really hear.
Oh, she just said,
I can
yeah.
hear Mike if he can repeat the
Yeah, I think that they just basically were saying thank you, Jewel, for all the work. They know how much time it's taking and how much effort is going into it. And so I don't know that there were any specific questions, but just a lot of appreciation in the room.
Yeah, I would just say if there already is a plan to have intense, I'll hold my questions until then.
Thanks, Jewel.
So, are we asking questions?
Management report, yes.
Okay. So, Mike, I just wanna be clear, you're talking about a 6-year levy, and the last 4 years, the money would be spent more on technology. What would the first 2 years?
The first 2 years, there's already money in the previously passed capital levy to pay for technology. So the first 2 years, the numbers that we're looking at is, let's say, 10 million and 11.5 million, so a little over $21 million. That would be, it would go towards capital renewal throughout the district. So what the committee has done, what Bassetti architect firm has done, they've gone to every building at this point. Every building we have, this building, transportation, maintenance, every school building, and identified deficiencies in the buildings. Also identified kind of wish list types of things. Those dollar amounts well exceed the 21 million. So what would be happening in the first 2 years would be looking and identifying and prioritizing kind of where are the greatest needs that the district believes we should attack with those. Could it be a roof at a building, maybe an HVAC system in a building, could be any number of things. And I think Jewel mentioned one of the things that the committee will come back with is individual members will kind of come back with their own recommendations. You know, we've gotten all this information, this is what we think. The architects, everybody will do that, but ultimately, I think by the time we come to you in a month, I guess it's a month, we will have vetted a lot of that with recommendations on how would we prioritize that $21 million. Then in years 3, 4, 5, and 6, that's when we just run, it's money set is there for technology. And the idea would be that in 2025, 2026, in 26 you run another, either a bond or a capital levy that would then begin in 2027 for a larger amount of money.
For building.
Correct. And the whole thing is, we have a short-term issue because we've got to make a decision pretty quickly if we're going to do something in 2024. But we have a longer-term issue that we need to spend more time on coming up with what the actual really good plan looks like. That looks at every building and says over a 20-year period, we need to do this at this point, we need to do this at this, a roof here, flooring here, HVAC system, or if it's a building that needs to be replaced. I mean, I think it's something that the committee clearly feels is that Pearson, after having visited the school, look at that recommendation in the bond to replace Pearson is something that's going to come back again at some point. That might be something that would be in that longer term look. But spending time to look at not only the things that were in the bond, but what things weren't in the bond with an updated, as we had talked, and Mike was on a committee member, about an updated facility condition index that this is now what we have as of right now. And one of the other things I mentioned in the management report is also updating our demographic report so we have the most current information with respect to what we're thinking about enrollment over the next several years. So that short term, we look at this, but then we've got roughly 18 plus months, if you think about if we run an election in 2026, February or there sometime in 26, you got a lot of time to do the work. And we need to, I think the community was good enough to pass in 2018 a capital levy. We've done a lot of work with that. We've got to outline exactly what we've done, how it was spent, what we did with that money. They renewed that in 2022. We need to do the exact same thing with that 22 money. We have the opportunity to run one in 24. We'll have another couple years, and we need to just systematically just become part of the community with respect to these meetings and presentations and listening sessions and engagement, so that when we do get to the point where the board's considering either a bond or a capital levy in 2026, whatever it might be, it's a much different place than it is today in terms of information.
So on the 25th, will we be able, a week before that, actually see what the priorities for that money would be?
Yeah, I think what we have to do, is, because not only do we have to pass a resolution, we have to also have ballot language, at that time. So we've gotta get, I don't think we're in a position to be real broad with what we're talking about doing. I think we need to be as specific as we can about those things. I would anticipate maybe some different options coming forward, or a recommendation with different options, and then you having the ability to kind of weigh in on that as well.
Oh,
But it's not gonna be, we want 21 million, we'll tell you later what we're doing with
well,
it.
that's what I was kind of getting nervous about.
Yeah.
So,
Now, if you're- if-
That's
thumbs
not
up or
the-
thumbs down, and we don't really know what it's gonna be spent for.
Right, and I would say that work of the facilities advisory committee, that is what they're doing. They are going through those, they are tasked with bringing you back their recommendations, they are putting their names on that recommendation, to you, and so that is what they are doing multiple times a week right now. It is a lot of time that they are dedicating to that.
And I think a lot of time has been spent, on the Facility Advisory Committee website that outlines on the district's website the meeting dates, the minutes from the meetings, the slide decks that were in the meetings, and each of those slide decks lists all of these projects that have been brought forward as potential. And it's all draft because they're constantly reworking the numbers, but, it's all out there for everyone to see.
And if you need a quick link, we sent it out today, so you can hit that link and go in there and you can see exactly what's in the minutes, you can see the reports that the committee is looking at, you can see what is being presented at the community forum, we put in FAQs, and so the website is fairly robust.
Yeah, I think this is a great plan, to address the emergent needs, first, recognizing if you look at the amount of work that was done leading up to the bond, it's a multi-year process to do that. So to take the time to update our data, both analytics and on the condition assessment side, address emergent needs, and then making sure that we have the long-term plan so that we can then look at that. So, not talking to specifics, but I think that the process, it is very good, and again, tons of work being done by the by the advisory committee, but also Bassetti Architects. I think it was a good move to lean on them, just really looking forward to see what the project layout is. It's just, again, we know that even at our current levy, we're still under what our surrounding communities are. Even if you look at the district with comparable school districts, we're still underneath that. I think we have to make this investment in our facilities to make sure that we have effective, safe learning environments for our students, but then also for the staff that are working in it, appropriate working conditions. I think it's safe to say that that's probably questionable right now in some of our facilities. So I think that again, whenever you're talking facilities, we're looking at 20, 30-year plans. It's at the point where we have to start making this investment. I think that's a reasonable ask from the community to do that.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
And Julie.
Okay, any other management reports?
No, that is it.
Okay. The next agenda item is public comments. So again, we have one speaker for this public comment period who's going to be on Zoom. So that is Stacy Schmeckel. So Stacy, you'll be promoted, and then if you could then turn on your camera and unmute your microphone.
Can you hear me?
Yes. to start.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, elected North Kitsap School Board Directors, appointed Director, Interim Superintendent Davenport, Finance Director Merlino, and Communications Coordinator Mark Herring. My comments are directed towards you. I hear over and over how the school district is ready to move forward. The community wants to feel ready to move forward. And one action you can take to restore the broken trust is to follow the laws of the Open Public Meetings Act. Please review North Kitsap School Board Policy 4110, North Kitsap School Board Procedure 4110P, and Washington State law that governs your policy and procedure, RCW 42.30.020. Combined, these show your response to the election loss by creating a process to add members to the board's Facility Advisory Committee, a board citizen advisory committee under your policy, quote, shall be formed by authorization of the board. Such authorization shall include a description of the procedures and reporting relationships and will specify the duration of the committee's existence, end quote. Could you please share this information? Could you please ensure this information is provided on your FAC website? Your procedure number 4110P states in section G, if the committee acts on behalf of the board, conducts hearings, or takes testimony or public comment, its meetings will be open to the public. Please ensure your FAC meetings are open to the public as required under the law. The statement tonight that the Facility Advisory Committee recommended that the North Kitsap School Board place a capital levy on the ballot in November of 2024 shows you are receiving direct recommendations from the Facility Advisory Committee. Another action you can take is to stop blaming your current superintendent, Dr. Evans, for the failure of the bond in February and take accountability for your actions and inaction. I grew up calling this sense of omission. It is challenging to believe you are ready to move forward without your acknowledgement of your role in laying out the misinformation you provided to the voters in North Kitsap. The two public meetings hosted by the FSC and facilitated by the study architect Gordon Keel, his firm was the largest financial supporter of the failed bond just committee, and the FAC meeting, you currently stated 180-degree changes in things from the bond, such as Slippery Pig is not what needs to be done for the building of Pearson. Instead, you could build at its current site. Wolseley doesn't need to be rebuilt, that it needs some repairs and maintenance, and that the Suquamish School is in need of many things. And the largest change is that you are now saying we could run a levy when you implied we could not previously. It was impossible. It seems a big act to have you change 180 degrees and expect us to distrust you when you have not accepted responsibility. Please share how and why we should trust the new information when Board Director Desmond at the NKHS FAC meeting last week implied the district does not have the ability to get an easement at Lone Maple when that was provided in writing to the district long ago. Help us move forward by taking action to restore trust with transparency, inclusion, and honesty. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, so that concludes public comment. The board will not be holding executive session this meeting. So the time is 7:52 p.m. and this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.